So, just a moment here. Yeah, as mentioned, I'm Alyssa Demmer. I'm from the Great Basin Institute. We are a nonprofit organization based out of Reno, Nevada, and then we also have satellite offices in Utah and in Las Vegas, which is where I'm based. I'm the Research Associate Program Coordinator for the Institute. So I work primarily with our Research Associate Program, which you'll learn about a little bit later. But I do definitely have a hand in recruitment, in hiring new folks on, and getting them trained and ready for their positions. So just a quick introduction about the organization here. So we are an interdisciplinary field studies organization with our goal to promote environmental and cultural research, education, and conservation throughout the Western United States. So even though we're based in Nevada, we actually have individuals working in our different programs in about 12 Western states. And right now we just started new projects both in Alaska and Hawaii. So we're ever kind of expanding. We have the potential to work nationwide. We have a national agreement with the National Park Service, so that could happen, but right now our focus is the Western United States, particularly the Great Basin region. Our mission is to advance applied research and ecological literacy through community engagement and agency partnerships to support national parks, forests, open spaces, and public lands. So we partner with a whole lot of different organizations. Our biggest partnerships are with all the major federal land management agencies. So you can see here we have BLM, the U.S. Forest Service, National Park Service, the Fish and Wildlife Service, as well as the Bureau of Reclamation. And we also work very closely with the AmeriCorps program. So a few of our different service programs fall under the AmeriCorps umbrella, meaning that individuals are more so considered volunteers. It's been compared to a domestic Peace Corps sort of service opportunity where you get a living stipend, an education award if you complete your term of service at the end, and basically this sort of internship opportunity to build skills for the next step in your career. So along with the federal agencies, we also partner with some state agencies. So there's a few examples on here, like the Nevada Department of Wildlife, the state of Nevada, as well as some other nonprofit organizations. So one example is Friends of Nevada Wilderness, Southern Nevada Conservancy, Yosemite Conservancy. So there's a lot more partnerships going on in addition to what's demonstrated here. These are just some of our big ones. And how we do that is we partner under cooperative agreements with the different agencies and other organizations. And that means that we're both working towards mutual goals. So from the agency side of things, they need important research done on public lands. They need projects to happen, and they want to help train individuals that can potentially work for the agencies later on. And then on our side of things, we're really focused on professional development opportunities. So helping facilitate these experiences with individuals that are able to have these opportunities working alongside agency staff and other organizations. So it's really reaching towards that same goal, basically getting people professional experiences in public lands and supporting conservation research throughout the West. So to highlight some of the goals underlying our mission, definitely to provide a variety of environmental and cultural services, education, and research to support our partnerships, to help train the next generation of conservation professionals and resource managers. So that one's definitely very important. There's an anticipated retirement wave in the next 10 years with these federal agencies and public land management agencies. So we're going to need people to help support public lands and to help conserve our resources, which is why we're so dedicated to getting folks in, having those experiences so that they can move into those positions potentially in the future. And then finally, to unite students, educators, professionals, and volunteers in protecting and restoring our natural and cultural resources. So as an organization, we were founded in 1999 out of the University of Nevada at Reno. And so it's always been a goal to work really closely with educational institutions. We started basically as a field studies opportunity program for students at UNR, and then went on to develop public programs, K through 12 programs, focused on environmental education and research before getting into our broader programs, which is where we're at now. So currently, the Institute's 3 main programs are Nevada Conservation Corps, an AmeriCorps more so individual placement program, and then the Research Associate program. The Nevada Conservation Corps is really an entry-level opportunity. So that's available to students at any levels. You just have to be 18 years old and interested in conservation and willing to work hard out in the field. We have crews that run out of both Reno and Las Vegas. Of course, less so Las Vegas in the summer, working in the outdoors. But we have folks that are working on projects like fuels reductions. So that's helping prevent wildfires by clearing out some of the dead underbrush and thinning out trees. We have trail restoration crews. So that's kind of what you see here, working on some trail decommissioning. We also have things like habitat restoration crews, aquatic invasive species management, and quite a wide variety just right within the Nevada Conservation Corps program. Again, with that program, it's very entry level, so you don't necessarily have to have any conservation or science experience going in. Maybe you just want to dip your toes in and kind of see what that experience is like and have the opportunity to work on public lands. So it's a really great place to get started. It is under the AmeriCorps umbrella, so you do get the living stipends and the education award at the end of the term of service if you complete all your hours. So it's kind of a neat opportunity to get started. I love talking about it because my first experience in the conservation world was through Montana Conservation Corps in 2010, and that kind of started me on this path as well. Also, I love sharing this slide right here because I didn't create this presentation, but this photo right here was already in it. And back in 2014, when I worked first for Great Basin Institute in the Research Associate program, I got to oversee this Nevada Conservation Corps crew. So these were folks who worked with me up in the Spring Mountains. So then, moving on to the AmeriCorps program, the individual placement. So these positions can vary quite a bit. It is still pretty entry level, but we tend to look for folks who are studying a relevant path. So it could be biology, environmental science, things within that realm, but it could also be things like communication, media. We have folks working in social media and national parks. The AmeriCorps individual placements can have opportunities anything from 3 months to 1 year placements. These folks are working a lot more independently at national parks or Forest Service lands or Fish and Wildlife lands or other public lands. And they're working on a great deal more variety of projects as well. So one example would be California Condor monitoring. Another example would be working as a GIS technician, a forestry technician. So lots of varied opportunities with that program. And then we have the Research Associate program, which is my wheelhouse, and I definitely know the most about it, having worked with research associates in the office here for just about 2 years. So the Research Associate program is still a professional development opportunity, but we tend to look for individuals in this program that come with a little bit more experience and relevant education in their backgrounds. So you might be a senior wrapping up your degree in biology or someone who's already had a few internships in the conservation world and are looking to take things to that next level. Research associates are not under the AmeriCorps umbrella. We pay hourly, full benefits. So it's a really good opportunity for early career professionals who are looking to grow even further. It is a pretty competitive program right now. So it's great to have some of these initial opportunities early on to kind of build your resume to get to that level. But it's quite worthwhile, and we've had several individuals in the research associate program who get working with an agency, build the relevant skills, get all this practice and training, and then are able to move on to agency positions because they've had that experience or because they qualify for an appropriate hiring authority for having served with a nonprofit to be able to move into those agency roles. So it's never a guarantee, but it certainly happens a lot, and we kind of like to think of those as our success stories. So the rest of the slides I have to show with you are just examples, photos that were submitted by individuals working in the field on a wide variety of projects. So I think it's kind of fun to talk about these individuals in our programs and the different sites that they're working at. So the first one here is Kelsey Grosick. She is in the Research Associate program. I'm actually her coordinator, so I get to speak with her fairly often. And she is a social media technician out at Joshua Tree. So she submitted this awesome photo. Of course, there's some photo editing skills involved there. But if you follow Joshua Tree National Park on Facebook or Instagram or Twitter, it's likely that it might be a Great Basin Institute research associate who has created those posts. So we have a team out there that works with right alongside Park Service staff to help create these posts and spread the word about Joshua Tree, as well as some really targeted messaging about conservation and supporting our national parks. So it's a really neat opportunity. And that is one that we have had funding for that project for several years and continue to hire pretty regularly for individuals to work under that project. So this is an example of a Nevada Conservation Corps crew. Typically with the Nevada Conservation Corps, you're working in a crew of 4 to 6 people. So you really build that community with your team. You work together for typically the entire season, camp together, live in the field together, grocery shop together, really kind of have that bonding experience with your fellow crew members. And this shows just a crew moving along a trail. They're likely going to do some trail maintenance. If you are from the Las Vegas area and you do any hiking in, say, the Spring Mountains or Red Rock Canyon, a lot of that work in terms of trail maintenance has been done by Great Basin Institute crews. So you kind of see traces of us everywhere in this region. Here's another Nevada Conservation Corps crew member. So you can just kind of see the different areas that folks wind up are pretty stellar. So that might be Red Rocks at Lake Mead, or it could be Valley of Fire in the distance. I'm not positive, but definitely in this area. So these folks are within the AmeriCorps program, showing how we've adapted to COVID-19 this year and have implemented a lot of policies to keep people safe, like social distancing. So these folks are environmental educators. They work out of the Galena Creek Visitor Center, which is up near Reno on Forest Service lands. We do have a number of individuals working in environmental education at a variety of sites. So they do really fun things like put on programs for kids in schools. Right now, during COVID, they've developed a ton of virtual programming to try and continue reaching groups and providing those opportunities. So that's a pretty neat experience. The next example we have here is for timber stand improvement. So we have a pretty significant amount of work with the Forest Service that is related to timber. So this could mean you're out in the field working on U.S. Forest Service lands in the Sierras, felling trees, so sawing down trees to help with the timber stand improvement, meaning helping to preserve those areas, but also reduce the fuels for the wildfires. And if you've been seeing any information this year about wildfires, we've had a very challenging year. So this work becomes more and more important on the front end to prevent wildfires, but also on the back end to help restore habitat that's been impacted by wildfires. So this is a photo from the greenhouse at Zion National Park. We had an AmeriCorps program member serving there last spring, and we'll have a research associate serving there this upcoming winter, helping to propagate plants. And so growing plants from seed to full size to be able to transplant back into the environment with the goal of habitat restoration. So a lot of the sites we work at, like Zion and Joshua Tree, are experiencing really high visitor traffic, which in turn comes with some degradation of the land, right? So trampling areas, construction projects that impact areas, and there's a lot of habitat restoration happening in these different parks. So one way to approach that is to get plants growing in the greenhouse and then transplant them to the native plant areas. Vegetation monitoring. We have many opportunities that come up in vegetation monitoring, particularly in the spring for seasonal opportunities in the northern area of the state and other states. This is Kyle Smith. He's working in partnership with a wildlife monitor there, Katie, and they worked with the Mojave Desert Network, meaning they are at several different sites, such as Lake Mead, Joshua Tree, Great Basin National Park. So they travel around a bit doing monitoring that's related to bats. So they're looking at bat habitats. They're looking for a particular disease that's been impacting bats called white nose syndrome. And as bats are a really important pollinator, a really important contributor to our ecosystem as a whole, it's a great ongoing project. Another big one that we have is desert tortoise programs. So we will be hiring about 46 to 48 individuals, I believe, this spring from March to May to participate in a desert tortoise monitoring program out of our Las Vegas office. This was something that we had to cancel last year due to COVID, so it's going to be a really big need this year. Desert tortoises are protected, so there's a lot of monitoring in terms of trying to figure out where these tortoises are. How are they breeding? How is their health? How are their habitats? And there's a lot of projects surrounding that. This particular one, Kristen Richardson worked in our desert tortoise program. And then from there, because she had developed some really great wildlife skills and vegetation skills, she actually went on to our research associate program and is now working at Joshua Tree. So again, looking at vegetation, here's at Lake Mead National Recreation Area. So not only are we monitoring, or do we have individuals who are monitoring vegetation for health of the landscape, habitat restoration, we also have folks that are looking at invasive species vegetation. So the species that come in and cause a number of problems. One, impacting the ecosystem by overtaking native plants, but also because they propagate so fast, these invasive species can be a really big challenge to fire management because oftentimes they dry up, there's large populations, and they're quite flammable. So invasive species management definitely plays a role in restoration in these areas. This is kind of just a fun one to show our adaptation during COVID. So this is one of our employees teleworking out at Death Valley in the park housing, which is actually quite nice at Death Valley. And just, showing how we had to adapt. And we were really fortunate. We had to cancel a few programs, but we were really able to adapt on a larger scale to get people teleworking, to get people working independently in the field, so in isolation. and doing a lot of teleworking, such as data management. So I mentioned earlier our social media technicians out at Joshua Tree. This social media outreach coordinator, Rachel, was actually a GBI staff member. So outside of our programs themselves, we also have a core staff like myself and about 35 other individuals who work administratively to support our different programs and development and growing the Institute even further. So Rachel was with us really taking our social media to the next level. So just a call out to her. This was a photo contest submission from a Nevada Conservation Corps member, Latricia Austin. So that's kind of just one thing we do every month. We have folks submit photos for a media contest, and they can win prizes like field gear and clothing that will help them out in the field. So this is just like a pretty fun submission for our red, white, and blue theme, where she just found all these rocks at one of their sites and laid them out, and it made us a little American flag. So this is another Nevada Conservation Corps member photo submission, but it kind of demonstrates a little bit more the cultural aspect of our work. So we have individuals not only working for environmental conservation, but also for cultural resource conservation. So archaeological surveying, museum studies, archivists, oral historians. We had a really exciting position this summer out at Death Valley that was a women's historian. So she focused primarily on all these incredible women in the past who have impacted Death Valley National Park, a pretty extreme environment. So we definitely help build those professional opportunities in the cultural resources realm as well. And this is a submission from an archaeologist, so that gives you a taste of that as well. Lori, who works with the Desert National Wildlife Refuge System, which is just outside Las Vegas, includes the Desert National Wildlife Refuge, Ash Meadows National Wildlife Refuge, Pahranagat, Moapa Valley as well. So that's an example of fish and wildlife work. White bark pine surveys. So just showing you what does it look like on the ground, doing some different types of surveys. So there's a lot of different types of surveys: transects, line point surveys, general data collection with GPS units. So this is kind of an example on the ground what that might look like. You mentioned California condors earlier. So this is a really competitive position. People are very excited to work with California condors, but it is a regular annual position for us. So if you've got a background and interest in wildlife, it's under the AmeriCorps umbrella, and we're seeking folks to work on that project every single year. So anyway, I just wanted to give you a taste of some of the different project work that we engage in with our various programs. And I guess at this point, I can open it up to